All right, Coach, you can just start with your opening statement, just wrapping up last night's game, and then just how you guys are preparing going into this weekend with New Mexico.
Um, yeah, I mean, you go home, you watch some of the film. I watched the first half last night when I got home, and currently finishing up the second half of last night's game, and then I'll start New Mexico. Have an assistant on the staff that already has the scout done, and we'll, visit a little bit with the scout team, and obviously get ready to start implementing that game plan tomorrow, just like we do for every opponent. 2 days out, we prepare for our opponent. So. But rehash last night, thought there were some really good moments defensively where we started to look a little bit like, how I want us to look defensively. Starting to get better and a little more connected. And some good stretches in there. They scored 58 and they banked a 3 in at the buzzer. So what is that, 55? And then they had 4 guys on their team that made a 3 last night that hadn't made one all year long. So, you're looking at probably holding them in the 40s last night, and a pretty talented team. So I was pretty pleased with our defense. We just have to rebound better. We're not blocking out well right now and pursuing. We're way more athletic than we are right now rebounding. So we have to get that part figured out. And then really just, offensive identity. I think right now, we're still trying to just kind of trying to figure each other out and figure out what we can run best, what's best for this team. I thought last night also, not having Juice in the game, that really hurt us because what it does is even though it's just one person, it has to change the way we play positional. So like, for example, Jacoby, as a 6'6" wing player, and we had to play him at the 4, and so it trickles down, and now all of a sudden Jalen is having to play the 4 last night, which, he's a 2 guard. So those things I thought really, really hurt us, regardless of who our competition was. When you really have to start changing people's positions, now it really screws a lot of things up, especially practice, because now you're having to teach a guy, all right, look, this is what the 4 does when the ball's being thrown in, or this is what the 4 does when you're being pressed. And it's just different. It was out of whack, and I don't know, just kind of a weird preparation for that game. So I'm excited now. Juice will be back, and we can kind of get back to playing the way I envisioned us playing this year, position-wise, size-wise. We're going to have a chance to put a team out there on Saturday night. Excited for the next one, and excited for the challenge.
Just what are your overall thoughts playing New Mexico this early in the season? This game came about a month later. Cons is a big opponent, again, this early as your first D1 opponent, but also pros is you're getting to test these guys not only on the court, but also their mental going into a rivalry game. Just overall thoughts.
Well, I think it's like anything else in life. I mean, you can take good and bad out of every situation, right? The good is the fact that we tried to play this game when we knew our students would be here. We've unfortunately played them, at their place last year, and then the year before that, we played them the night before our bowl game, and we just didn't give our students a chance or an opportunity to watch this game or to be here. And so I think just trying to get that game in a really good fit. If you played last week, we had a football game at home. If you play next week, it's final exam or Thanksgiving break. So, unfortunately with basketball, college basketball, there's just really only a few windows there. And then our people wanted to play on a weekend. We could have obviously maybe fit this a little different in a week schedule. But then you start dealing with final exams. So it was the perfect date to get maybe our home attendance to where we all want it to be. The negatives of it is, obviously it's early. Last night was probably our 3rd game of the year, because we had 1 scrimmage and then, 2 games. So as our 3rd game, and, we'd like to obviously have a little more time before you play a team of that magnitude. But, in the end of the day, you line up, you go play, you play the cards that are dealt to you, and our guys will be ready, and we'll be excited for the opportunity.
You guys
wishing maybe you guys had already played a D1 before jumping from D2 straight to New Mexico, or do you like kind of how the schedule has worked out for you guys so far?
I mean, it always probably could have been a little bit better, but that's the way it goes. I mean, listen, in scheduling nowadays, unless you have money to go buy Division I games, you play the games that you can play, and you play them when you can play them. And we didn't. Unfortunately, we just didn't get anybody that wanted to come here and play this year. Luckily we had the New Mexico game penciled in, and we've got a return game to Abilene. Other than that, it was really hard for us to get anybody. No one wanted to come play us here. And so, we got into the Cancun Challenge. The biggest reason I got into the Cancun Challenge was because part of that agreement was to get the game here with Sanford. So now we get the Sanford game here, which will be another great game for us, and the New Mexico game. So we have 2 Division I non-conference games at home, and that's just kind of the way it's going to be here, until we can get into a different situation where we can, got to have some resources in order to go and buy some Division I home games, and that's kind of where we're at right now. But it doesn't matter. I mean, our guys will be ready, and regardless if we're at home or on the road or a neutral game, we got to keep getting better.
You mentioned after Ohio State game that thought Jace was a little banged up, and of course he missed last night. What did he miss with, and do you feel like he's going to be good to go on Saturday?
Yeah, no, he got a concussion in the game last Tuesday. So, I mean, he was in concussion protocol. He's out of that now, but the doctor wasn't willing to release him to play last night. So, we're taking today off, and he'll be back into regular scheduled practice tomorrow. He's worked out the last 3 days with a coach, and just no contact. So he'll be ready for contact again on Thursday. And yeah, just had symptoms. We obviously have a tremendous doctor, tremendous training staff. My trainer does a great job, and there's just certain things they have to do. They got to go through a certain protocol. There's about 3 or 4 steps in there that, before you ever even see the doctor again and they'll release you have to go through. And so he's doing that right now, and he'll be released and ready to go on Thursday for practice.
What do you think of this New Mexico team right now with the new coaching staff, all new roster? Just how do you assess that?
I have no idea, Nick. I'm down here talking to you instead up there watching the game film right now. Yeah, I hadn't watched him yet. I mean, Preston's got that scout. He's done a great job. We've talked already. Talked last night. We talked this morning. I've watched Coach Olin's teams play when he was at UC San Diego. Good friend of mine, coaches at Cal Irvine, and so I watched a lot of their games, and saw UC San Diego play. Watched them play. They played against Jamel's team last year. So, I know he's a tremendous coach. I know that he's won everywhere he's been. I have a lot of respect for him because he's a D2 guy. Started out when UC San Diego was D2, stayed there the whole time, took him through the transformation over there to D1, and then he took that team and went to the NCAA tournament. So a great coach. I also know what they're working with over there in their budget, NIL, and I know they got some really, really good talented players. And so, I know it's going to be a tough game, and we'll have to be ready to go and have our scout ready and all those good things.
You talked about finding your offensive identity. You had 3 scoring double figures in the first game, 3 last night as well. Is that kind of the range you want to be in, or do you want to see more guys put up those numbers? And if so, who else do you think could reach that and kind of step up a bit?
That's a really good question. I think ultimately, as a coach, you'd always like to have at least 3 guys on your team that average double figures, but I do think that maybe the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th guy, it'd be nice to have some kind of range in there between 7 and 10, and I think that gives you a level of consistency that tells you that maybe one of those guys on any given night doesn't score double figures. The other guys that are in that 7 to 10 range could, have a big game and go off. I don't know right now who those people are or who it could be. Because I just think that we're still trying to find out a lot about ourselves. It's probably no secret that Jamel's going to be one of those guys, pretty much on a daily basis or gamely basis. And from there, I think there's still a guy or two over there that I've expected a little more from, and for one reason or another, they're not quite there yet. That's my job as a coach, is to figure out that why, maybe to get them into different places, get them the ball where they're a little bit more comfortable. Some of that's going to come with us executing better. We're not executing yet. Our spacing's not what I want it to be. But it's been kind of a disappointing for me because we've really worked hard on that in practice, and we've actually looked pretty good at times. But you got to be able to carry it over from practice to a game, and and I think some of that too is maybe people are guarding us differently in some areas than maybe what we see against each other, and so we have to get that scout team and maybe guard us differently as well sometimes if we can get to a point where we have time for that.
Mims was one of those players in the first game in double figures. Obviously, he didn't play last night. Obviously, he wasn't one of them. Anthony and Ekwe, too, that stepped up from that first game. Just what did you like out of them last night, and what do you have to continue to build upon for those two in particular to hopefully have them show up and produce like that consistently?
Yeah, I don't know if those are two guys that I would say I would pencil in to be double figure scorers for sure. But I do think they're two guys that could be in that range, 7 to 10. Augustine is just he's a young, energetic, excited freshman with a lot of talent. He's kind of, he's like a wild horse out in the range. He's trying to get him reined in a little bit and teach him how to play the game and teach him all the different things he's got to learn in order to get better. So but it's fun to work with him because he's excited to learn, and he's got a lot of ability and a lot of talent. And I think last night everybody what do you have, 10 and 6 and 2 block shots, so extremely athletic. Saturday will be a huge test for him because he'll be playing probably against the best players that he's ever played against so far, right? Went from high school, we've played 2 D2s, and now he's going to get a chance to play against some really good guys, and so I'm excited to see how he handles that. Anthony's just solid. He's a guy that I would, if you'd have told me last night, hey, he's going to score 15 and play great defense, I would have said okay, because nothing that he does surprises me. He's obviously a kid of mine from 3 years back, and I recruited him when he was in high school. I know a lot about him and his family. I know what he's made up of. He's a guy that you definitely want to take with you to war. And I'm glad he's on our team, and there'll be a lot of those nights where, he makes some big shots for us for sure.
When I talked to Jamel earlier today, he told me that over the offseason you really tried to motivate him to be a better defender and things like that. How do you feel like he's progressed as a defender to try and help you guys out for what you want to do in your system?
I think the first game he was right at about average, which is good, I think. I have not seen the numbers from last night yet and how he graded out. Just watching film, like I said, I'm about 3/4 of the way done with the game. But, I thought maybe last night was even better than his first game. So, he's coachable, he's willing, he's getting better. There's a lot of things that he's trying to learn in our system and how we want to play defensively. But off the top of my head, I didn't go home last night and say, man, he killed us defensively. I thought he played a pretty good game, and the thing about Jamel is he wants to win, and he's willing to do whatever that means or whatever that takes to win. And I think he's a competitor. When the lights come on, he's a lot different, just a different guy. So I thought he competed defensively last night, and again, it wasn't something that just stuck out where I thought he really hurt us in a lot of areas.